Hi, so my name is BikeBasket95 and I just wanted to share about my opinion about the de-escalation of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So living in China, I've got Russian friends and I've got Ukrainian friends, and it's a very complex situation. I've known that for a long time. I've known that from the outset. But having spoken to my Russian friend about this issue, I was pretty sure that there wouldn't be an invasion. So it's not surprising to me that the Russian forces have been reportedly leaving the border area. I also have talked to my Ukrainian friends, and if you're an English teacher in China, it's pretty likely that you're going to know both Ukrainians and Russian people. And they're also very much unsurprised that the Russians have not invaded the Ukraine. So there's a couple of different issues here that I want to talk about. So one is like the information war aspect of it. So it really is kind of, I'm not going to talk about the Crimean situation because it's something like, I haven't been to Crimea, so if I had been there, I'm living in Eurasia, it's over there, but I haven't been to Crimea, so I'm not going to comment upon that. But Russia at the moment doesn't have a GDP as big as England's. It doesn't have a GDP the size of France. It's got a GDP about the size of Spain. And it's got a population of 200 million people. And I really feel like the whole information warfare campaign was designed to break the back of Russia. I believe that they were trying to get Russia to invade, and it obviously didn't work, but I think that was what they were trying to do. And I think that the intention that they had was that it's like a game. You can get 12 men who are the best cricket players or the best football players in the country, but when they play another 12 men, they could win. And the Ukrainians were fighting for their homeland. The Ukrainians are well equipped, well armed. So Russia could have invaded the Ukraine and either been unable to win decisively, or they could have even been defeated. Now, if they were defeated, it most likely would be the end of Putin, because if you have the longer historical view of Russia, Russia, before it was the Soviet Union, was a country that had a lot of different military experiences. And if you go back to 1905, Russia was defeated by Japan. They were defeated by the forces of Japan. You could go back to the first Crimean War, where the Russians were basically defeated by the Western powers. And then if you go back to the Napoleonic era, it was the winter that saved Russia, but Moscow was occupied. The back of Russia was really broken, even though they were able to regain their territory and be victorious. So Russia really was there was no real incentive for Russia ever to invade Ukraine, because the risks were just too high and the consequences of invasion were too great. But the Western media hyped up this story. They hyped up the conflict as being inevitable. They did a lot of dramatic things, supplying them with weapons, moving forces around like on a chessboard. The javelins, if you remember the Javelin land-to-air missiles, and they're also effective at taking out armored vehicles. There was I think $500 million worth was given to the Ukrainian forces. So what they've done, they've really forced Putin to not do something, and that might be a victory for them. They might see it as a victory. I've always had a lot of sympathy for Putin, and even though I don't claim to be an expert on him, I've always viewed him as a. I mean, if you just listen to the Western media opinions about Putin, it's very different to like actually reading like transcripts of what he says in press conferences and so on. He's a fairly straight talking character, and I really don't hold any animosity towards him. I think that he loves his country, and he's tried to do his best for his country. But going back to the information war aspects of this, just what has the West gained in terms of promoting the idea of the conflict being inevitable? It's really hard to know. So if you're an expert about this, if you've thought about it, I mean, there's probably a man on YouTube who's, well, is there a woman on YouTube? You know, there are a couple, but I think a lot of guys have been talking about this. I was really sort of like expecting the war to happen because the Western media had told me it was going to happen, and now it didn't happen. It's kind of a little bit of it's a relief, because guess what? In warfare, people die, people are injured, people suffer. So I'm certainly relieved. But yeah, it's very interesting to think about just why the West was waging this information war against Putin's Russia, and yeah.